Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Mr. Rogues. In this video we spotlight forgotten supervillain, the Painter. Throughout the decades, countless vile knaves have reared their ugly mugs to pester our beloved superheroes. Some of these dastardly rogues have gone on to stand among the most infamous fictional villains in pop culture history, while others have completely vanished into obscurity. In this episode of Forgotten Supervillains, we spotlight the Painter. The Painter, real name Wilhelm von Weil, what a charming name, made his first appearance in Strange Tales 108, published in 1963. The story, titled The Painter of 8,000 Perils, was written by Stan Lee and Robert Bernstein and penciled by Jack Kirby. In it, we meet Wilhelm von Weil. A failed painter became a counterfeiter, first duplicating famous paintings and selling them, then moving on to counterfeit money. Needless to say, this career of his wasn't very successful, as von Weil was always sloppy with his work, leaving out important details. Eventually he was caught in the act by none other than Johnny Storm, the alias of Fantastic Four member, the Human Torch. Von Weil was thus sent to prison, and vowed to get vengeance on the Torch. While trying to escape prison by digging a tunnel through his cell floor, Weil discovered a secret underground cavern underneath the building's foundation. Inside this seemingly ancient cavern, the artistic crook noticed strange images on the walls, paintings, as well as the paints and brushes used for the job. Weil deduced that these were alien in origin, and soon learned that they held mystic powers. Whatever one painted with this magical paint actually happened in real life instants later. While using the brushes, one also painted at super speed, finishing the image in a matter of seconds. So, the criminal naturally painted himself escaping from the cavern in the prison. An instant later, this happened. Von Weil then decided to use these powers to become the ruler of the entire world. To help him out, he recruited the services of notorious gangster Scar Tobin. Before conquering the world though, Weil would get his vengeance on the Human Torch. Simply killing him off wasn't good enough though. He had to torture and torment Johnny slowly, dragging it out before dealing the finishing blow, or brushstroke. Of course, this is what led to Von Weil's defeat, as the Torch eventually figured out a way to beat him. The villain was presumably sent back to prison, and the character then completely disappeared. We didn't see him for a very long time, and it seemed like Von Weil wasn't meant for anything more but being a one-shot character. However, out of nowhere, the villain returned almost 30 years later in 1991. This took place across 3 issues of Web of Spider-Man, beginning in issue 74. The character was now back, using the name The Painter. His real name had also been changed from Wilhelm von Weil to Wilhelm von Weil. The Painter is considerably different in this story. His old powers are gone, and he instead wields a single brush with unidentified powers, as it seems to be able to do a whole lot of different stuff. He's also far crazier and doesn't seem interested in power at all any longer, instead wishing to spread his so-called art. The guy is also covered in weird cockroaches that appear to speak in some strange alien tongue. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Anyway, in this story, Weil teams up with 2 other artistic weirdos, namely Spark and Bora, a pair of performance artists with mutant powers. One of Weil's abilities, at least, is that with his brush he can enhance these 2's powers. Together, this demented trio, calling themselves the Avant-Garde, plan to wreak chaos in the world by subjecting it to their twisted art. They were only stopped in the end by the combined forces of Spider-Man and Weil's old nemesis, the Human Torch. Since then, the character has not returned. As for media outside comics, I think you can guess. This villain was requested by viewer Joe Kerr. I myself had never heard of the Painter, probably not so strange considering he's a very obscure Marvel rogue. Joe Kerr's description of the character seemed interesting though, and here we are. So the Painter is a great concept in my opinion, a crazy artist with paints that can do anything essentially. The possibilities for such a character are endless, yet they never really did anything with the guy, nothing too great anyway. His first story is kinda stupid, and his second is just weird. It's a shame Painter disappeared after the 60s and missed out the entire Bronze Age. That could have been an era of development for the character. His origin is just silly and really needed to be changed. I mean seriously, he digs through his jail cell and finds an ancient cavern where he discovers alien paints? That's just too Silver Age and has to go. Von Weil should perhaps instead be portrayed as a mutant or something with actual powers over the paints himself. Or maybe give a better explanation to his tools, a less goofy one. Also, the guy is ridiculously overpowered. He can just paint the death of all superheroes and it'll happen. Why doesn't he just paint himself becoming king of the world? That's how easy it would be. Maybe this is why the guy wasn't used again for such a long time, and then when he returned his powers were different. different. What do you do with a character of such omnipotent powers? It works with Mr. Mxyzptlk because he's just a prankster and chooses to just fool around, but Von Vile wants to rule the world. I think you would have to put limits on his powers somehow, establish boundaries of what he can really do. That's really the only way to solve it. Besides these painting reality powers, Vile can also bring his paintings to life and command them. He only does this once in the first story though, and then never again. I gotta wonder why. Maybe this should have been his sole power. Bring paintings to life. That's far easier to work with and doesn't make him overpowered. I do like his personality better in the second story, as he's completely nuts, but the overall portrayal is better in the first one. I don't even understand half the things going on with the guy in the Spidey comic. What is up with his new powers? What the hell are those cockroaches? And what in the name of God happened at the end? I'm not going to spoil it, as you should read it for yourself, and I'm not even sure I can explain it. It's really weird, that's all I'll say. But yeah, like I said, a great concept for a character, but it needs some work. Also, what is he? A Fantastic Four villain or a Spidey villain? Make up your mind, Marvel. So there you have it. That is the story of forgotten supervillain, the Painter. A promising rogue who was never given a chance to fully blossom. Thanks Joe Kerr for introducing him to me. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.